Hey everybody! Happy Tall Talk Tuesday. I just, as the same as I do on every stream, I just want to make sure that everything is working because I'm streaming to multiple places. So if you could go in chat and shout out on whatever platform that you're watching on so that I can at least get an idea of if it's working, if you guys can hear me, if all of that is happening. So I'm right now supposed to be streaming to Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, shout it out. Instagram is supposed to be working also. Instagram I've been having some trouble with over the past few weeks, but hopefully that's going to work out better this time. I'm streaming on X. Usually I don't have any problems with that, but sometimes the comments don't always come through. So if you want to do live comments, make sure to check out one of the other platforms. Should be streaming on YouTube. That's usually not a problem either. And then Twitch. So I'm just going to go through and make sure that we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing. And in the meantime, I can give you a little bit of a lowdown on Tal Talk Tuesday if you have no idea and you're just here and you're like, what is this and why is she wearing a towel and what are we talking about today? So I see Twitch is working. Awesome. I see that X is working. That's great. Instagram is working. Yes, Instagram's working. Facebook is working. So YouTube is the only other one I need to check and then we can get going. Once again, I'm still working on my desktop tower fan. So if you do hear a little bit of like whiny fan noise, that's exactly what it is. I will be consulting with a ton of MSI articles to try to figure out how the heck I'm supposed to get this to work. I've tried like every article that's talking about tower fans and like being able to I mean, I'm not even running, I mean, maybe right now, but it's the fan is engaging before I even start streaming. So I'm like, I have nothing is using up that much CPU before I start. So I don't really know why that is, but it looks like YouTube is working. So we are set to go. I will explain a little bit about how Tal Talk Tuesday works, and then we're going to get into what we're talking about this week. I'm going to try to keep it to 30 minutes. I went over last time, so I'm sorry. I know I like to keep it to these like 30-minute bites because sometimes when you're watching, especially if you're getting over 30, 45 minutes to an hour, I mean, that's something you can throw on if you're like driving in the car and you can listen to it, but I don't know that I would want to hear myself talk for an hour, especially since if you let me go on, I will go on all day. So Tal Talk Tuesday is something that I came up with, oh gosh, probably longer than that, probably 6 or 7 years ago. And originally it started on Twitter or X, and it was just these little like 2-minute sound bites where I would have like a towel wrap on and I would have just gotten out of the shower and I would talk about something that was like pertinent to me that week. But this time around, obviously I'm streaming live, and the instigator of that is I would always like have people say, oh, can you elaborate more? Can you answer my question? And so I thought, oh, well, this is probably a better forum for it. But the idea of why I call it Tal Talk Tuesday is because I just got out of the shower. Sometimes like when you just start your day, your mind is fresh. You're just open to talking about whatever it is you'd like to talk about. So cool. I'd love to get into what we're going to chat about this week. And there are a few people who have checked in chat. I see. Let's see. My friend Kira says, hey, love. It's been so long since I've seen Kira. Oh, we need to change that. Let's see. My dad is here. Hi, Dad. Glad you're tuning in. It's nice to have the support from family every week also. I see Christopher's checking in on Twitch. Christopher asks, how is everything in Japan? It's good. For those of you, I guess I really haven't talked about it a whole lot. I'm not going to be here a whole lot longer in Japan, so I'm trying to do my best to figure out like the things I'd like to do before I leave so that I can feel like I guess saw, I guess there's really never enough time to see everything you want to see here, especially for those of you that have been to Japan before. I feel like there's never enough time. Uh, and I've lived here for almost 5 years, and you'd think at some point that I would have made a whole, I mean, I have a bucket list, but there's so many things that aren't checked off. So hopefully I'll be able to get some of those in before I leave. Otherwise, we'll just have to come back and explore again. So Kira asks, when do you leave? Nothing is definitive yet. So probably sometime this year is all we know. So. Drama Dork 884 says hi. And Christopher says, are you going to see Tokyo Disney before I leave Japan? I'm not sure. That's actually something that I had talked about wanting to do. I've been to Universal in Osaka, and that was fun, but have not been to Tokyo Disney yet. But okay, I took a few comments. Feel free to keep commenting. I will certainly wrap back around to that, but there are a few things that I do want to talk about this week. First of all, an hour before the stream today, I posted a flash poll, which I am going to start doing every time we do Tell Talk Tuesday, about what shirt you guys would like me to wear on streams. So, a few weeks ago when I did Tall Talk Tuesday, it was a Live Long and Prosper shirt and then a Star Trek Prodigy shirt with Doll on it. So that the Live Long and Prosper shirt won out. So then the Doll shirt switched back over to this week also against the Starfleet Museum shirt from Ticonderoga, New York. The Star Trek Tour, or Trekonderoga. I was able to get the shirt from them. Although I've never been to the Star Trek Tour, I really like to go. And hopefully when I head back to the United States, that's something that I'll be able to do. So this shirt won the poll today, which means the Dow shirt will switch over to next week, and it will be going up against another different shirt. So I have a whole entire dresser full of just Star Trek shirts. And I think over the coming weeks, I'm going to also put up shirts that are not Star Trek related, still kind of fandom related, but I also, one thing that I want to talk about on stream today is that along with pursuing content creation more this year, I'd like to also venture into some other fandoms. And I've there's so many that I hold really dear to my heart, although it's weird because all the posters are Star Trek and most of the figures are Star Trek. But there's so many there's so many different fandoms that I've never been one who's you have to stick to one fandom or another fandom. There's always an opportunity to be able to branch out, and I think it's the more the merrier. And also I find sometimes when I watch shows or movies from different fandoms, especially in regards to science fiction, that what I gain from watching that also wraps back around into how I enjoy Star Trek and how I view Star Trek. And it's not always necessarily bad to make comparisons between different ones. Especially I know Star Trek versus Star Wars is the big ooh, clash. But I think that it's possible to compare them and talk about them, but not have to pit them against each other. So yeah. But that actually leads me into my very first topic today. And that's going to be, I'm going to cover a little bit about something that I did at the Okinawa Comic-Con in December. The 1st through the 3rd, I was able to be a part of the Okinawa Comic-Con here. It's a convention that Marine Corps Community Services offers to the military community, and they also welcome in Japanese locals here in Okinawa. Obviously, they could fly in from mainland also, but it's something that's hosted on the military base, and it's done every year, and I've had the opportunity to be a part of it for the past 2 years. I was really lucky to have some friends from the Star Trek community that are also I would say that also kind of do the same sort of things, work with conventions, that they they stream or they feature Star Trek actors on their channels, and I had a few of them write me, or I asked a few of them to write me recommendation letters, and so then I was able to submit that to the Okinawa Comic-Con, and then I was able to host and MC the convention for the past 2 years. It's something, if you've been following any of my stuff around the Okinawa Comic Con time that I always get really excited about, because that's something as a kid I would, you would see like conventions or videos about that stuff, and then you would wish, you're like, oh, I wish one day I could do that. And then especially when I got back into the convention scene in 2014, when I was able to start attending a lot more conventions and attending panels and being able to talk to people on the panels, and then eventually becoming friends with the people that are up on the panels. That's something I was like, I really would love to do that someday. And now that is not someday anymore. That is something that I am doing. And that's very gratifying for me. And it feels like a very full circle moment. So that's really fun. I always get really giddy when I talk about it, because it's something I always dreamed about, and now I'm doing that. So cool for me. But also kind of nerve-wracking, because especially when you're hosting and emceeing, you want to. I've always been a person that's been very committed to wanting to do my very best. I know my dad's tuning in something that he taught me. It's called DYVB. It was a little acronym that we would always talk about, and it's do your very best. So shout out to you, Dad, for inspiring me to do that. But that also places a lot of stress on me, because I always want to be able to bring my 100% game. And this past year was kind of tricky to do that. One of my dogs was going through a lot of health issues at that time, and so there were a lot of things happening in my life, and I was very stressed out. But the convention itself ended up being an amazing experience. But like I said, I'd go on all day. But let's get to the actual topic of why I brought up Comic-Con Okinawa. At Comic-Con Okinawa this year, I was offered the opportunity to kind of brainstorm a few panels that I would like to do on my own. Usually they bring in obviously a lot of different talent, voice actors, talent from the mainland, musicians, artists, all this stuff. And so this year there was like some not gaps, but like there was an opening in programming. So I was able to kind of brainstorm what I'd like to do. Like they gave me a few hours, like here's an hour on main stage, or here's another hour in here, and what do you want to do with it? And it was kind of fun, because I just kind of got to run with it. And so I'm going to talk about one panel that I specifically brainstormed, and how I was able to structure that in a way that worked out. And I think it's very applicable to the social media space also. And I called it Battle of the Fandoms. And so immediately saying that, I'm sure some of you are like, oh my gosh, we're pitting up fandoms against each other. That's probably not the type of thing that we want to be doing, especially in an online space where sometimes it can get really toxic, and people have very strong opinions, and they are not willing to budge or not willing to be cordial about it. Yeah. So I'll kind of get into how I structured it and how I think it actually could work for an online space, or even like an in-person space, because I think that's something, the way that it turned out at the convention is something I think I'd like to do in the future. Maybe whether I do it on a stream, or I do it maybe at another convention in the future, back in the United States, if I'm invited to do something like that. So the title itself is enough of a giveaway, in which I would pick different fandoms and we would have a discussion about them. So I had a translator with me, and she was so wonderful and able to translate everything also into Japanese, so that we were able to have like, it wasn't just catered towards the Americans, that the Japanese locals could also take part and interact in a panel like discussion or forum. And so let's think about some before I tell you the ones that I decided to do. Do any of you that are in chat have any ideas of possible fandoms that I decided to group together? I did 2 at a time that I would do against each other, like a battle of the fandoms, where we would discuss what we liked best about each of the fandoms and which one we preferred. So if you have any ideas of which ones I'd put up against each other, not just television shows, we did movies, we did video games, we just did like mainstream IPs as well. So like we're talking about like like full franchises, stuff like that. So if any of you have any ideas, I'll catch up with some chat stuff, and then hopefully you can post in the chat what you think of which fandoms we put up against each other. So I'd love to see in chat what you think. But let's follow back around with some chat stuff. Christopher says, do you have shirts from every Trek show? I believe I do. I think the only one I would be missing is Star Trek the Animated Series. That's one that I don't know that I do have, but I believe everything else. I don't have a shirt from Star Trek Picard, but I do have some other merchandise. Like I have like a backpack and some pins. Kira says, I've never been to Ticonderoga. I'll go with you. All right, let's set it up. When I get back to the United States, let's go. In cosplay, right? Todd says, hi, Allie from Twitch. Hi, Todd. Thank you for tuning in. Let's see. Christopher says, has your husband been able to expand his anime collection or Transformers stuff while in Japan? It's a great question. For those of you that are tuning in for the first time or don't know me very well, my husband is also quite an avid collector, nerd fandom. We're a great match in that way, but our interests are very different, and so he's very much into, obviously, as Christopher mentioned, Transformers. He has, I believe, every single Megatron Transformer, or at least most of the main ones. He's very proud of the one that he got that's just recently from Beast Wars. Those of you are Transformers fans. And in regards to anime stuff, we've definitely been watching a lot more anime since we've been here, but he's also very much into collecting 6-scale figures. So I think the most recent one that he got was Doom Guy from Doom. I believe, it's from Sideshow, but I can't remember. I believe it's a Dark Horse that we're looking at there. But yeah, we have a whole room. Our master bedroom in our apartment is actually, we had to move our master into one of the second bedrooms because we needed the entire master bedroom space for all of our nerdy, geeky stuff. So if that doesn't explain us enough, it does now. Christopher also says, oh, hey, Todd. And have you been able to watch Trek Talks 3 since the last stream? Did you have a favorite panel? I know I mentioned last Tal Talk that I was going to watch Trek Talks that following day. I'm going to be honest. For those of you that don't know, what I was talking about my dog earlier. He unfortunately, trigger warning here for anyone that's going through pet grief, but he passed away a few weeks ago. And so grief has kind of been hitting me hard and in waves. And there's some days where I feel okay. And there's other days where it's like absolutely crushing. So I have not gotten to that yet, but I really hope that I'm going to be able to get to that this week, especially because I have so many friends on the Trek Geeks team and have been able to do different projects with them. I'd really like to see how that went. So fingers crossed. Christopher says, that's cool. You've been a part of conventions both virtually and physically. Oh, thank you. It's a dream. It's the dream. All right, one more thing from chat, and then I'm going to open it up to your guys' ideas of which fandoms we put against each other in the fandom battles. So get your ideas in now. There were more there. I did like 4 or 5. It was on two different days of the Comic-Con, so I did 4 or 5, and we did different ones. So feel free to throw out your ideas if you are not sure, or if you, it doesn't even have to be ones that are like super popular, because I'd love to get some more ideas too, of things we can kind of do in fandom battles in the future. Christopher says, how has Japan been different than you expected, and how has the Japan experience been during COVID versus post-pandemic? Different than I expected. Well, I would just say originally when I found out that we were moving to Japan, it was very overwhelming. I was terrified because I just had no. I'd always wanted to visit Japan, but living in Japan is a whole different story. And getting all of your stuff and animals and belongings and finding a place and all of that is very stressful. And then it's like you have to do it immediately when you get here. And so that I think was the thing. I was just worried that I wasn't going to be able to adjust. I was really worried about the food. I grew up in the Midwest, so I feel like my food palette was very specific. A lot of meat and potato stuff. So I feel like I was really worried about the food. And I have since gotten a lot more adventurous. I love ramen. I love curry. Still working on sushi. I can do some of it. It's my husband's favorite, so I'm really working hard to get better with that. But I'm a texture eater, so it's really difficult for me. I love soba. I love udon. Oh goodness, I could keep going for forever. But Japan experience been during COVID. I mean, we're still there's still COVID is still, I would say, here in Japan is still something that's in regards to like the way things operate here in Okinawa and in the mainland. It's still something that is very prevalent in people's in the everyday thing, and masking is still very common, and I still wear mine when I go out, and it's not over yet, but I would say it was really hard to move here in 2019, and then to not be able to do anything, to go anywhere for a few years. And obviously I knew exactly why we couldn't do that, but I was really interested in traveling a lot more, and we really didn't get the chance to do that. So but in the past few years, or in like this past year, we did have a chance to do a lot more of that, and that was really exciting. So all right, let's get into what you think we did for fandom battles. Star Wars versus Star Trek. That's what Todd says. Yes, we did Star Wars versus Star Trek, and this was one that was particularly hard for me, because everyone, at least everyone that was sitting in the panel with me that day, was very much related to Star Wars versus Star Trek. So I was the main voice for Star Trek there, and I feel like I did a great job backing up Star Trek. I would say, even though, I was the panel host, that Star Trek definitely would have won. But, yes, Star Trek versus Star Wars was a popular one. And I think a lot of that, though, was a lot of, at least the community in which I was giving the panel. I would say that Star Trek is not super popular within, I don't want to say that's not 100% accurate, but not as popular within the military community as it is within other communities. The military community here in Okinawa is, there's a lot of younger military members that maybe have not ever, delved into Star Trek, or maybe it's not something really adjacent to anything else that they had watched. So a lot of them were a little unsure about that. But one thing I want to share about this one before I move on is that during the second day when I did this at the panel, there was so essentially how it would work is I would introduce both of the topics, and I would give my quick lowdown of what they are, highlights of them, right? So let's talk about the different movies or the different TV shows and all that's related to it, and then a brief idea of this is what I like about Star Wars and this is what I like about Star Trek. And then I would open it up to the people that were attending the panel, that they could come up and share which that they prefer or which they think should be in the top spot. So the second day that I did this, one of the people that were attending the panel came up and they decided to say, actually, Stargate, and then gave their ideas about what they loved about Stargate. And so that was really cool for me because that's exactly what you want to do is like I didn't just want people to come up and say, "Oh, I like Star Wars," or "Oh, I like Star Trek." I wanted them to be active in the conversation. I wanted them to really share what they loved about it because that's something that we can bond over as like maybe someone else that came to the panel really liked Stargate too, but they didn't find anybody else at the con that likes Stargate. So then now they have somebody they can talk to and say, "Oh, well, I actually really love Stargate too, and this is what I like about it." And then there you go. That's a connection. That's exactly what I want it to be. One of my favorite things about conventions, other than the numerous other things that are great about conventions, about like the vendors room and the cosplay and all of that stuff and the panels and all that I love, but being able to connect with other people about the things that you love. That is my favorite part about a convention. That's my favorite part about this space. That's my favorite part about streaming. That's why I'm here right now. This is exactly why I do what I do. So that was just really cool. And I'm really glad that he came up and said that. All right, we have another one. Kira says DC versus Marvel. Yes, we also did DC versus Marvel, but this was a tricky one because it's kind of hard as like a whole IP to be like, oh yeah, DC versus Marvel, because we're talking about, you know, are we talking about comics? Are we talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe? So this was fun for me to be able to introduce it in different ways where I'm talking about, okay, well, we can talk about like DC IPs. So like we could talk about Batman, or we can talk about Superman or Wonder Woman, or et cetera, et cetera. Or we can talk about like, let's talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I specifically took a section to talk about the DC animated movies and TV shows. So like we're talking about one of my favorites being Young Justice. And so that was fun for me to be able to kind of like, it's fun for me to be able to sprinkle in my thoughts and see if it like prompts anything from anybody. Marvel won out against DC. I'll tell you that. And I think that goes along with maybe the success of the recent DC films, or the not as success of the recent DC films. But then we're also talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, massive. But I mean, there's something for either. So, all right, what's up next? Christopher says Dungeons and Dragons versus Lord of the Rings. That is not one that we did, but that's a great idea. Are we talking about the movie itself for Dungeons and Dragons, or are we talking about like the role-playing game? Because I mean, we could do, there's also an opportunity to talk there about like Pathfinder or Warhammer 40K against Dungeons and Dragons. Also, Lord of the Rings itself is also so massive, especially with Rings of Power coming out. Are we talking about the movies? Are we talking about the books? Are we talking about like, are we including like Silmarillion stuff in there? Like what, all of that, you know. But that's definitely a great one that I could definitely do in the future. Kira says, want my Kirk as a Jerk shirt. It's the animated series, because I had said that I didn't have a shirt from the animated series. Yeah, sure, Kira, thank you. That's very kind of you to offer. I'll send you a message after that. Todd says, it's great to hear you're taking the Tea Trekkie brand to the next level. Oh, thank you. I'm doing my best. I'm doing it. We also have another Dramadork884 says DC versus Marvel, common one. Christopher says, I also have never been to the Tychon. I can't speak right now. I also have never been to the Ticonderoga sets. I'm really looking forward to it. I've heard amazing things from anyone that's been there. So I kind of just want to wear my original series cosplay stuff and feel like I'm completely immersed. My friend Sandra says, hi, miss you. Oh, thank you, Sandra. I miss you too. Brad Pilcher from Twitch says, Expanse versus Alien. That's a great one. I had thought about doing Alien, and I was a little... I would say like a little out of my depth. I've seen the Alien movies before, but I wouldn't say that I am like a I'm definitely a fan of them. They're incredible films. And also, like, space horror is great. And I think that when Star Trek does space horror, it's also great. Something that I think is so freaky. I still like. I can't imagine if I were in Alien, I would be the first one. I would be the first one gone. But also, I've not seen enough of The Expanse. I've seen a few episodes, and that's actually on my watch list coming up soon of something that I'd like to finish. But I'm also rewatching through the original series of Star Trek right now, and I'm like indicating a lot of things when I'm watching through. So I'm gonna pull out really quick and find it. Like, I'm doing full episode notes and stuff, so that's taken up most of my time, because I'm looking to do a blog series about some Star Trek rewatch stuff. But The Expanse is on my list, and that's actually probably going to be what's coming up next, after I finish. Right now, I'm doing the Disney Plus show, the Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I've read the books, I've seen the movie, so that's what I'm working through right now. Todd says, haha, giving up your master bedroom for your collection shows true nerd commitment. Dennis. Sonic versus Mario is a great one. Not one that we did. I did have it written down, but we didn't get enough time to actually get to it. That is a great one, though. There were a lot of Mario cosplayers at Okinawa Comic Con, so I'm not sure. Maybe that I'm hypothesizing which one perhaps would have been. But actually, last year at Okinawa Comic Con, Shota Nakama, who's actually part of the Sonic Symphony, was one of the guests. So maybe last year, like not this past year, but like the year before that would have been a selling point for Sonic for sure. Pixar versus DreamWorks. That's actually a really good one. And I think that's a lot more geared towards younger kids, where there were a lot of younger kids that were there. So that's something that I could have mentioned also, like actually bringing up different DreamWorks and Pixar films, and then the younger kids being able to either raise their hands or be able to vote on which one that they like. I think that's a great idea. That's something I'm always trying to do too. I've been thinking a lot about, obviously, in my previous my previous line of work and my current line of work, working with youth and teenagers and children in the military community, about things that I can do to help bring the pop culture space into their lives in a way that makes sense to them, in a way that is comfortable to them. And because obviously as a kid, I can remember being so avid about different pop culture things and how exciting that was for me. And especially now, I mean, shout out to Star Trek Prodigy, our animated Nickelodeon Star Trek kids show. Not just a kids show. I had someone message me this week saying that, like, Prodigy is not just a kids show. It's much more than that. And it is. I agree. But I'm actually right now a project that I'd like to start working on. And if any of you have any ideas or anything you'd like to add, I'd like to start working on a curriculum for different age groups, for youth and younger kids, like school age care kids, and then also for teenagers, that revolves around pop culture, and being able to expand the horizons on how they experience pop culture. So maybe they've never had a chance to do model making or painting like you would do in Dungeons and Dragons, or maybe they've never had a chance to experience like a lot of science fiction, because maybe if that's not their parents' thing, that they would have never done that, or maybe they have never had a chance to do comic book art or anything like that. I'd like to write a few different curriculums for different ages, in which maybe after school programs or clubs at schools can utilize that and be able to offer those opportunities to those kids that might not have had that exposure into the pop culture community. And we can do it in a way that is not just specific to one fandom, that talks about all these different fandoms. And then perhaps that can lead some of these kids into being not just being able to find out about maybe these fandoms or these properties that they had never known about before, but also it if they had been a fan, or if they had maybe not wanted to talk about that they were a fan because they felt they had no space to do so, that now they would be able to do that in a space where they felt comfortable and they were with other people that enjoyed the same thing. So sorry for my tangent on that, but I'm actually that's like some main research that I'm working on right now, because I'd like to create these curriculums, and be able to help children, youth, and teens be able to grow through their fandom and through pop culture. So, yay! It's like my current fascination. That's like my 100%. This is what I'm working on right now. But okay, Kira, Doctor Who versus Good Omens. That's a great one. We're also, I mean, if we could just get into a David Tennant talk about that also. David Tennant's my favorite Doctor. We could get into a Doctor Who conversation about different Doctors. But also Good Omens. Oh, that's such a comfort show. I love that show so much. It's been an experience mailing things to you, so that has been fun. I'm glad mail is quicker now than it was during the pandemic. Yes, Christopher's been sending me some awesome care packages, and I have a care package for Christopher that is waiting to be sent out. Drama Dork 884 says Udon is my favorite. Oh, it's so good. Galaxy Quest versus Star Trek. That's what Christopher says. That's a great one too. I've always wanted to cosplay Galaxy Quest. That might be my next cosplay challenge. We'll see. C3 Carpenter. Hey there. We have got to record together sometime. Hit me up. Yes, I will. I know I had said I would message, but it's been a crazy few weeks with some grief stuff going on over losing a pet. So I'm working through it as best I can. But I appreciate everyone's been so kind to reach out and to ask me how I'm doing and all of that. So I really appreciate all of your kindness. It's been really hard, I'm going to be honest. But I appreciate all of you. Disney versus Looney Tunes, as seen in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. That's a great one. Also, we have Jaws versus Jurassic Park. Battlestar Galactica versus The Expanse would also be good. That would also be a good one. I agree. Let's see what else we got here. This might be too niche, but I've had great discussions with people about Jane Austen versus the Bronte sisters. Oh, that's a great one. That is a great idea. Too niche. I don't know. I think it would definitely. It would definitely. What am I trying to say here? I think in a specific audience, maybe I've had the opportunity since I've been here with Marine Corps Community Services to also do some like Star Trek stuff / pop culture stuff at the local libraries. I've been invited in to be able to participate in a few things there and be able to host a few things there. That might be a great thing to do at like a local library also. And also, I think that's something my mom would really like. She's very much into more Jane Austen, I would say, but I think that she would definitely like to participate in that discussion. Making people feel involved and heard about their interests is a sign of a good panel host. Oh, thank you, Todd. That's what I would want if I were participating in the panel, or coming up to talk about something during a panel. So that's why I always want to offer others as well. Babylon 5 versus Deep Space Nine. Like station shows. Yeah, that's a good idea. Speaking of, he probably had to pop off because I haven't seen him commenting, but when I posted this week about what topics we should talk about, which it's already 39 minutes. I'm already over and I'm not surprised. But when I talked about what topics that I wanted to do, my dad had mentioned he sent me a message and said, do Babylon 5. I did not decide to go with that because I'm honestly, I either need to get someone on here that is more versed in Babylon 5, or I need to do a really quick binge watch of it over again. I've seen a few episodes of it with my dad. Like I said, he's the one who said I should do it, but I I mean, I just want to be able to talk about it in a way where I feel like I have more of a grasp on it. And right now, I'm not in that space, so I need to either rewatch it or have a discussion with someone that knows a little bit more about it. Christopher says, I like the YouTube videos at Ticonderoga with different guests, like the Okudas or the original cast. Yes, they do. That's what they call it, like Trek on Daroga, and they invite different actors or members that worked on Star Trek in, so that you can talk with them, have discussions with them. I think the next one that's coming up, isn't there one coming around in like August or something? They're doing something there. I can't remember if it's in August, but I'll have to check it out. Christopher says, I find it interesting seeing Balance of Terror and then seeing the contrast of the Strange New Worlds season 1 finale. That Strange New Worlds episodes makes me appreciate Balance of Terror films. Yes. And this kind of goes back to Drama Dork was saying that it might, like, certain topics might be too niche, but it all depends on the audience as well and how you present it. So I think even like you could do something at Star Trek Las Vegas talking about the original Balance of Terror versus the season 1 finale of Strange New Worlds. That's like a space where that would thrive, and I feel like there'd be a lot of discussion. So I think that it all depends on where you are presenting this, and how, like, what are the people that are going to be there, and what would they, what do you think they'd like to talk about? Math versus science, that'd be a great one, especially for like the younger younger kids that were there, because I mean, at Okinawa Comic-Con, it's open to like all ages. So we're talking, like, there were a lot of younger kids there as well, especially during there was a cosplay showcase, and anyone can enter the cosplay showcase. I was the host and was accompanied by a translator, and anyone can sign up. And the showcase, you don't have to have major costume. You can just come up and kind of strut your stuff and like do a pose, like, wow. And so anybody could do it. And a lot of little kids came up, and it was so fun to see them to just come up and like try to embody their character. And I would always do this thing too, where they would come up and I'd be like, oh my gosh, Spider-Man is on the stage right now. He's right here with me. Show me the web shooters. And then they would like do the thing, and like it was fun. I try to make them feel like, especially as kids. And I mean, I remember when I was a kid that in pop culture, you always want to, the people that you want a costume for, like, oh, I want this costume. I want to be Spider-Man, or I want to be Wonder Woman, or I want to be, whoever. It was because I appreciated something about that character. I wanted to embody that character somehow as a kid, because I was like, oh, they're so cool. So them coming up on stage and being able to do that, I want them to feel as cool as possible. I want them to feel like they are that character. So, okay, let's keep going. We're getting through chat. Once I get through chat, we're probably going to wrap up, because we're looking at 45 minutes already. And then next week, I can talk a little bit more about a different topic. And maybe I'll put out a prompt for what we'd like to do. But before we do that, I told Kira that we would talk about really quick a topic that they had posted on social media, because I want to get to that before we're done as well. Christopher said, one thing I found interesting in Trek Talks 3 was listening to time in the writer's room with the Berman era versus in Prodigy and Lower Decks on time, from writing to making the show. Writer's room stuff is actually very interesting. And as I wouldn't say I'm anywhere near being a screen, writing screenplays or writing anything like that, but I do love to write, just in general. So that's always very fascinated me. Let's see. Galaxy Quest versus the Orville is a great one. Kira says, which Galaxy Quest cosplay would you do? I don't know yet. I'll have to get back to you on that. I'm going to have to think about it. There's multiple ones that I feel like would be great. Todd says, pop culture curriculums is a fascinating idea. Thank you. I'm really that's something I'm really passionate about right now. Sci-fi versus fantasy genres. That's a good one, like overall, overarching, to be able to just talk in general about sci-fi versus fantasy, and maybe about like I mean, I feel like there can sometimes be like a very generic idea of which is which, like this falls into sci-fi and this falls into fantasy, but then maybe being able to pick out a few more of those identifiers to see if like what exactly do we say is sci-fi versus fantasy. Like maybe let's pull out a Venn diagram and see like where the crossover is. And then also that's also something that could work for like literary stuff too. And it's all encompassing. Indiana Jones versus Tomb Raider. That's a great one. Don't know that much about Tomb Raider. I've seen the movies, not played one of the games, but Indiana Jones I could definitely talk about. I'd have to brush up on my Tomb Raider. Pop culture curriculum would be a good podcast or a limited edition zine. Oh, okay. That actually would be a good idea for a podcast. I know that the Pop Culture Hero Coalition is doing some really cool stuff in advocating for kids to be able to enjoy their fandoms and to not be bullied for it. So that's maybe something something that I've been thinking about, talking with them and speaking about like what they do also, so that I could try to factor some of that in. Brad also says we need more physical zines and journals in our lives. I'm very much like a paper, I don't want to say paper person, it's not the right word, but I prefer reading an actual like handheld book over, I mean, I have a Kindle, but I prefer that. I've been getting a little bit more into audiobooks. I've been trying really hard to meet my reading goals this year. So, but I also have been trying to get more into reading comics, which we have many. Splash versus Little Mermaid, comparing mermaid films. We could put H2O in there also. That could be something. Arnar, clear. For any of you who've seen H2O, you will understand that. We now have 3 different versions of the Gorn. Which is your favorite? That's a good one. And we also have Tasha Yar in Skin of Evil versus Tasha Yar in Yesterday's Enterprise. That's definitely a deep cut, but as Tasha Yar is one of my favorite characters, that's something that I would definitely talk about. Bruce Wayne versus Tony Stark. That's another one that we could talk about. Getting into like the DC versus Marvel, you could definitely go a lot more. You could get a lot more specific into that, is what I'm saying. Okay, before we go, because we're at 48 minutes right now, and I said I would be 30. I feel like this is every week though. I'd like to bring up one really quick topic for y'all to ruminate on, and maybe you can put some stuff in the chat, but if not, I think I'm going to retweet, or what is it? It's not even tweet anymore, repost. My friend Kira posted this earlier, and they were talking about, you remember 2 weeks ago on Tal Talk when I said, hey, let's talk about comfort episodes. Which ones do you watch when you need, when you need a pick-me-up, or you just, what's the favorite episode that you put on when you just want to sit back and enjoy it? Kira suggested not comfort, but confront. And they had said characters, confront characters. So for all of you that are watching, and if you're watching this later, you're welcome to comment on it as well. Do you have a confront character? It doesn't have to just be in Star Trek. It can be any IP, any franchise. What character are you absolutely like, I cannot deal with them? I cannot be, if I were there, I would absolutely not be able to interact with this person. I would walk away or maybe throw hands. What is a confront character that you just cannot stand? And I believe that Kira said Kaiwin. That is also one that is me. one of my most recent rewatches that have been completed is Deep Space Nine. And I will tell you what, all those Kaiwin episodes, I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot do it. I literally was like, oh, just let me get up and like, Kaiwin. So that is definitely one. Let's see. We have some comments already of confront characters. Kaiwin, LOL. That's what drawn. We're all on the same wavelength, I see. Kira laughs maniacally. Or manically, sorry. You opened up the door, Kira. Now, here are our confront characters. Christopher says, confront character like Kaiwin. Also, Gul Dukat. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. There was... This is actually a conversation probably for another time as well, but there were... if you've seen Deep Space Nine, I don't want to spoil anything for anyone that has not. But there was definitely an attempt at trying to create a redemption for him, which fell through. And I don't know that I was ever on board with it in the first place. So that's a great one. Confront character. Subsonic Man 768. Oh, child. My child. Oh, child. Oh, Kaiwin. Cannot. Kaiwin is right up there. Christopher says Derek. In real life, I would probably be a confront character. Drama Dork 884 says she's just so easy to love to hate. Yes. And that also says so much about the fact that I think sometimes especially when it comes to villains in science fiction or in pop culture or in anything that we are very connected to, villains are so easy to hate. And that's something that like it can sometimes be very hard to distinguish outside of that. So I've read articles about actors saying like, people are so afraid of me because I play a villain in, this franchise. And now they absolutely cannot, they can't look me in the eye, or children are afraid of me. And that just goes to show like how they were able to convey that in whatever it was, TV show, movie, video game, whatever. And how that now has translated over to real life of people being like, that performance was so strong that now in real life, I'm even afraid of you. Landru in Star Trek, the original series. That's a good one. We have lots of Star Trek examples there too. I think that there's a lot of Star Trek villains that we just, as Drama Dork said, I'm going to bring that up again, so easy to love to hate. Drama Dork 884 also says, I think there was just something about characters that are bad, act pious or better than everyone else that works so well for villains. Yeah. And I think that's especially with Kaiwin, is that in her mind, everything that she is doing is justified. I mean, it's kind of the same idea as like Thanos, for example, from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Well, it's not just the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but he was so grounded in everything that he did. It wasn't just, he was like, this is what has to be done, and this is, there was no, I'm just being mean to be mean. Like, he actually, like, there was so much behind that, and that's why it's like like you said, it just works so well for villains. The Return of the Archons is probably my least favorite episode, but I loved what Lower Decks did with that planet. That's kind of fun too. Like, Lower Decks is falling back around on a lot of things. I mean, for those of you that have seen Lower Decks, there's so much to love about Lower Decks, but we're also getting all of these deep cuts of things that we never ever, things that I had never ever remembered. Like, things, was mentioned offhand in an original series episode that I hadn't thought about in years, and now it's like, whoa, now it's here. Kira says the mayor from Jaws. It's a good one. Dun 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 dun. Todd says it really shows the acting credentials of the actor playing a villainous part. Props to them all. Yes, yes. But what I'll do, I'm gonna have to wrap this up because we're hitting an hour, so I'm gonna cut it at an hour. It really this is a great discussion. So thank you to Kira for prompting this. But also it's a discussion that I think that we need to keep going. So I'm going to repost what Kira posted on X. For those of you that are on X, check it out. So that we can continue this discussion because it's a great one. Okay, one more quick comment. Love the deep cuts Lower Decks does with the animated series also too. Especially the animated series is not, it's something for some of us. Like I said, it's the Star Trek that I've seen the least, and the Star Trek that I know the least about is all the animated series. And so it's definitely bringing it back into the forefront, as it should be. We need to follow back around with it, especially with the anniversary having been, just recently. So, all right, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you all so much for being here today. You're welcome to sign off in chat, give a little shout out. I'll try to wrap it in here really quick, but there are a few things I do want to mention for those of you that are here. I know you're tuning in from multiple spaces, but things that I want to talk about are really quick, like here's where you can find me. So this is Tal Talk Tuesday. I'm hoping to do it more often, probably every Tuesday from now on. It's also, it's been really fun to chat with all of you, and it's like I said, I'm kind of going through some grief stuff right now, but this has been great to be able to have this discussion with you guys, and it's definitely it's made today great. So thank you to all of you. But there's multiple places that you can find me. I know the main one a lot of you find me on is X, or previously Twitter. That's at @TTrekkie. You can also find me at that on Twitter. I just said that, not that. On Facebook, sorry. You can look up @TTrekkie. It'll pull up on Facebook. Also, you can find me at @TTrekkie on YouTube. You can find me at @TTrekkie on Twitch. You can find me at @TTrekkie on Mastodon. I am hopefully going to be creating, now that it's open, a Blue Sky profile for those of you that are on Blue Sky. You can find me at @TTrekkie on Instagram. Is that all of them? I think that's all of them. Feel free to follow in different places, because I'm not always every stream. Tal Talk Tuesday will probably be on everything, but I'm going to be doing things on different platforms. So feel free to wrap around like on Twitch or on YouTube for things that are going to be exclusively on those platforms. And also, like I had said earlier, I really appreciate all of you for tuning in today, or if you aren't watching it live, if you're watching it later, I really appreciate all of you being part of this fandom, this pop culture community. It has been one of the most amazing experiences in my life. It's allowed me to do a lot of things I never thought I would have the chance to do, and meet so many incredible people, both virtually and in person. So, but yeah, we have some sign-offs. Todd says, thanks for a fun chat, everyone. Christopher says it's 9 p.m. in Florida. It's 11 a.m. here in Japan. Kira says, miss you so much, kisses. I miss you too, Kira. We will definitely follow back around when I get back to the U.S. Christopher says, what is Mastodon? It's a platform that was, it's not uncommon now, but it's kind of like X, like Twitter, and it was something when we weren't sure about when Twitter, if it was going or staying or whatever was happening with it. So feel free to check it out if you'd like. Todd says @TTrekkie on all the things. Thank you, Todd. I appreciate it. But we are just at the hour mark, and I had said it was only a half an hour, but here we are. This is every week. But that means there was a lot of discussion, and I'm glad that there was. So I hope in the future, maybe we'll be a half an hour, maybe we'll be 45 minutes, maybe 60. We'll see. But as long as the discussion's still happening. With that, Have a wonderful day, everybody, or evening. I know I have a day ahead of me, but a lot of you have an evening. And feel free to continue the conversation with me. You can reach out, DM, and or message or whatever works for you if you have any questions or any of that stuff. But I appreciate you all. Live long and prosper. And trek on. Signature sign off. Trek on. Bye.